Hey, good evening, everyone. Tonight we're going to go through the PAWS HR component. I just want to cover a couple of standard ideas first before we actually continue with an actual demo on the system itself. So what we allow for as part of our performance management, as part of a KPI, is to have various sections, and each section has its own weighting. And within each section, you have your questions or your KPIs, and they also have their own weighting counting towards the section's weighting in which they form part of. So when we step through the actual system, just know that this is the way that it works. So you can have multiple sections. So for instance, if you have a stretch KPI, which is standard across the company, then you can allow for the stretch sections in there as well. And also, for instance, a stretch section, if that does not count towards your standard KPI, you can just set the weighting down to 0 as well. So it's completely scalable and adjustable depending on the needs of the company itself. We also allow in the system to rename any of these names that is being used. Certain people will call it questions. Other people would want to call it KPIs or KPIs. I will quickly show you how to do that as well. Okay, so if you look at the system itself, you'll see it is our standard system. Like we say, it's 100% completely integrated system. So we enable and disable functionality based on the needs of our clients. I'm going to log in as an admin first, and then afterwards I'll log in as an HR manager, a normal manager, and then an employee to let you basically have a feel as to what is available across. Okay. So if we log in, this is basically the administrative view, full access, which have access to C-Learn, M-Learn, E-Learn, and PAWS on the same system. PAWS can be found under HR. So under HR, this is where you define your KPI definitions, which is your sections, and your KPI questions based on that. Okay. If we go into your sections, you want to add a new definition. You basically select the name, what you want to call it, the job title it actually is applicable to, the start date for validity, and the end date. This we can also allow for a complete validity. So for instance, that it is valid for a full year, and you can have multiples of the same within the year, or we can allow that it's a start and end date which specifically need to be fired for this KPI on a specific date as well. So that you can either have the same definition spread across a year used multiple times, or it can be said that it is triggered and for instance, your KPI evaluation starts on the 1st of October and it has to end by the 10th of October. Then you can set the start and end date accordingly, and it will be available from the 1st of October and end at the end of October on that. Your KPI questions, that actually forms part. So after you've set up your new definition, in that, you can go and set your sections within each KPI. So if you have a new section, you can just say general section, and the general section, we're going to have a 0 weighting on the general section. So it doesn't, this whole section will not count towards your KPI evaluation at all. Okay. You can link your questions that are being set up through this action button, and for each question which you add, you can basically just then give a percentage towards that. We normalize all of the percentages in here, so it doesn't need to add up to 100%, even if it's only 60% or 70 or 80%. It will normalize across the section, and the various sections will then normalize across your total as well, based on that. Okay, to set up a question, that is your sections, and the way your sections and the standard definitions are being added. If you want to add a new question, it also very simple. You go to your KPI questions, you say new KPI question, and you say have I given my best? So it's a standard question. After you've set up your standard question, you can set up the various ratings within that, or options or answers, if you can call it answers. So we have a yes. A yes will say you've got 100% on that. You can have a sometimes. Sometimes, for instance, is 75%. And we can add a no, which is then 0%. And there's no limit to how many answers you can add. That's completely up to the client itself. And these answers will then be displayed, or the options to be selected will then be displayed to the employee as well as to the manager and HR manager as well. I'll show you when I log in as an HR manager, as a manager and employee, that you can see the difference. Okay. A lot of people do not like naming that is available here, so KPI questions and definitions. That we can change through this. As you can see, we can add multiple languages depending on the needs of the client itself, and also allowing them to completely customize their feeling on that. So if you look at KPI question, I'm just going to change it. You can quickly see how easy it is. Okay. So that KPI question. Okay. I'll show you now exactly how quickly it is to do it. Okay, let me just quickly log out. Okay. So if we log in with the HR manager, the HR manager does not have all the functionality available, but the HR manager can actually set up and have a look at your questions and definitions. They can also have a look at, that is currently still shown as learner, but we'll change it now and show you how it actually changes on the system itself. And then you can have a look at your KPI evaluations depending on who it is, just by selecting, okay, this one doesn't have a KPI selected. We look at the KPI here. You can basically select it, add it, and edit the manager answer, the agreed answer, and also allow for comment on that. You can also attach files as evidence. So if you have specific evidence that you want to upload against it, you also have the ability to upload specific evidence towards your KPI and towards justification of the final KPI on that. Then you will also receive your learner answer, your manager answer, and the agreed answer on your KPIs, depending on the options that you selected here. When we set up the KPI questions, we allowed for various responses or various options in there. That is then in a drop down here, and that was what was defined on the other side. So test answer, I'm just going to complete one quickly. This one is a 101. Okay. And I'm going to save it quickly. Okay. So this is how easy it is after it was set up to actually update it and to change it and to provide feedback and your comments on that. Okay. Just want to make sure that I'm the right learner here. Okay, that was 0304. So if we log in, and this, if I remember correctly, was the learner itself. So you'll see we're still on this profile. have allowed for and showed the way that the profile will look if you have your eLearn, MLearn, HR, and all of the components in here. And this is basically your profile, and this is your KPI evaluations. That's where they would be if it was enabled on this profile. There weren't any enabled on this profile. So let me quickly log into this one. Okay. Much cleaner, much less information available. You basically have your tasks and you have your KPIs where you can actually log in. This is a manager profile. So a manager doesn't see any of the HR definitions or questions. That's all settings which you enable. And through this, you can then actually have a look and update the KPI as well. Because this is a manager, you'll see you have your ability to answer the manager answer as well as the agreed answer on that. A learner only has the ability to see the learner answer on that. As you can see, it's already started to update your percentages based on the 2 questions which we have answered on that. Okay, so I'm going to quickly log out here and just log in. This is the full system with everything enabled in there. So if we go into the messages and we look at the various, so for instance, we set KPA questions. Okay, you see there we've already updated to indicators. That's fine. I'm just going to update all of them that they actually show indicator. Okay, so you remember under HR, we had a KPA questions. So if we log out now and we log in, then under your HR, it's now KPA indicators, not questions anymore. And that still shows question, but that's also just one of the updates which you have to do in that. Okay, so all of the changes that you need, everything on screen, you can directly change from the system, from the back office. If you just go into messages and you create or you update and have a look at any of the messages that's in here, and you can change it according to the language that you want to change it as well. Okay, 3. Okay, so I'm going to unmute. That is a very, very quick overview. I believe there's going to be more answers. So I'm going to unmute everyone now, and then you can bombard me with answers. Okay.
Okay, how did that go?
Yes, bro.
Tell me, obviously, one is going to, where do you start in terms of loading a client? Or where do they start in terms of loading?
Okay.
I mean,
that is actually, we've made it so quick and easy. We from the back office, if a new client, I can step you through the process quickly, the way that it actually works.
that would be great.
So if we load a new client, I'm going to use an HR client on that as well. Then we could basically create, on the training provider, we created what we see in the system as a training provider. But remember, this one has everything in. If it's an HR client only, that will be the client, and the learner will be called an employee.
Okay.
Okay. But through this, you basically set up their name and their address details, their contact details, all of that. If they do have eLearn, you actually we add the e-learning details in there. And for customizations and all of that, if you go to your, just want to have a look which one. Okay. Okay, these are also default values which you can either enable or disable on that. Okay, but you've got your standard, well, we've moved it now, sorry. URL settings. If you go to your URL settings. Oh, okay. Sorry, man. I haven't granted myself access to this yet. Okay. Let me take a profile which actually do have access. Okay. If you go to your URL settings, this is where the client comes up. So this is, we can add a new URL host in there, which will be the address of the new client. The address of the new client, we basically then customize to the settings, all of the settings of what is available to them. So if they are just an HR client, or a POS client, or MLearn client, to eLearn client, we set it up all through there. And for the look and feel, we basically just change it here. So if you want a new, let me just get a quick, just want to get a POS logo through here. Stationery logos. Just going to take a quick logo. There's a 251 there. That is there. And we save that. Okay. Just want to see on which one that was. That was on dev test. Make sure that I've saved it. Log out. Okay. As you can see, that's how quickly and easy it is to actually update and to customize the view. So then it's already created a new client on that with their own URL, which we define for them, as well as their own branding. So there's the logo, which I've added here, already there. So that is how easy it is on the back office to set up a new client. So the first thing is you set up a new client. And after you've set up a new client, you basically...
Sorry,
yes.
Can I just ask, Dirk, the URL is just their login, that's where they go to log into the system.
So that's one,
okay.
Even though everyone, if they have their own dedicated server, then that full URL is their own. But if it is, for instance, we can call it anything. You say this is dev test, so that would be the dev test company. But we can make it any company name to define it as their own portal. And when they log into that, the whole look and feel and everything, the color schemes, all of that will be then matched against that based on that we've set up. Then as soon as you log in, they can actually then set up their own KPI evaluations. So the first thing then will be, because their profile details are already updated, but they can update their own profile details as well, to ensure that everything is correct accordingly. And then if they are just a POS client, then none of these others will actually apply or show to them. They will basically have an HR portion there, the other, which allows for your tasks, and their own profile details, which is employee, as you can see there, which is employee. That's the one we changed just now. So it's employee for HR, and none of these others will apply then. They will not have that if they are only an HR client, a POS HR client. But they can then set up their own employees, their job titles. For all of their job titles, their departments, all of that, that is all part of codes. So you select basically job title there, job description, sorry. And in your job description, you can just add another one, a new code, and you can say it is HR manager or whatever you want to, payroll HR administrator. and that is where you can set up all of the job definitions. So all of the job descriptions are in there. The locations, I think it's under location, yes. So locations, you can basically add the number of offices or what offices you do have. So in this one, let's have a Cape Town CPT office. You can set up the various offices, and then on an employee, when you load your employees, you link the employee. So we're going to take, this one is not going to save because the ID number is incorrect. We do certain validations as well. So if the ID number is incorrect, it doesn't allow you to save it. But you'll see under each employee, there's a section. And the section, you can select your job title and the department where you're in, and then the location. So if you're on a Cape Town office, when you then generate or kick off, this is not going to save. Okay. When you then kick off,
Dirk, just a quick one. Where does it pull their line manager from? I mean, have you created a report hierarchy or?
Yes, on the employee. If you edit an employee, let me just go back to that. Let's look at that 0304. If you go under your HR portion there, you've got a manager. There's your manager, if it was your manager, and there's your line manager, where you update your line manager.
And you can add one, presumably, if you're creating the system from scratch.
If, for instance, yes. If, for instance, this employee is a manager or has employees enabled on them, we basically just say click manager, yes, and only HR manager has access to this, or depending on the level. So this one, for instance, now is, I believe, Dirkie Potas. Yes. So let me show you quickly. If I open another employee now, let's open that one. And I go down to the manager, then you'll see that line manager, the selection for line manager, there's Dirkie Potas now as well, where you can select it. So it's as easy to indicate whether it's a manager, yes or no, and that will then automatically. On the back end, all of this then builds your hierarchy for you, because we've got the office, the location, the department they're in, as well as the manager linked to them.
Tell me, just out of interest, I see you've got things like bank account details and so on. Is this like a replacement for a human resource information system, or does it run in parallel with one? How does it? How do those two things fit together?
Our end vision is to have a full-blown HRIS system integrated directly with your payroll, all of that. That is our end vision. So we already started to add all of that functionality in there. On this system, we've got access to everything. So all of the functionality as well, which can be enabled. So if we do not have the payroll function for the client built in, then that pay details will not show there, or that banking account details will not show.
Okay, and obviously there must be reasonably high security on a system where people's bank account details and so on, and ID numbers, and you know, all the things that enable them to be hacked and yeah, I mean, obviously there needs to be reasonably high levels of security on the system.
Yes, it's a PCI. It's called PCI compliance. Our system is a PCI compliant system as well. So we already have accreditation for that. So we can store all transaction details as well as all banking details in the system.
Just one question quick from my side. When you load a client, for instance, the integration, okay, the getting of the details.
Yes.
I mean, obviously it's imported. You don't physically have to type it. You set up the system and then you import from the client's can you import from an Excel spreadsheet? How do you how do you import the detail?
We've got a standard CSV format that we provide. They populate, which is basically Excel. They populate it based on that, and that provide all of the standard information for all of your employees.
Okay, excellent.
As soon as we can't validate or we can't provide, for instance, the address details in the system that they populated, and there's a reason for that. The reason for that is for data accuracy. Spelling mistakes always happen. So, for instance, the address details on any of the employees, if you look at an employee, the address details are all driven by codes. So if you look at the address section, let me just get there quickly. If you look at the address section, they're all code driven. So depending on let's take this one to Free State, you'll see everything is completely driven to ensure 100% accuracy based on those details. And that we, for instance, cannot allow to be imported. But that's why an employee also has access to his own profile where all of this can be updated. We can also set it that an employee does not have the ability to continue further to open or to update their own KPIs if their profile details has not been completed or updated correctly. So if you look at, let me see, that employee here, on the dash, it actually, I think I've logged in with the wrong one. It actually gives you a profile completeness section as well. Profile completeness section. Okay. So you can specify to say he has to have at least 80% profile completeness before he has access to his own KPI evaluation.
Any FICA validation built in here on ID numbers and physical addresses?
Yes. Not the addresses, sorry, the addresses itself. Addresses work as per the SA Postal Code for South African clients. So South African clients, it's 100% in line, and as with the SA Postal Service. And then for overseas clients, we basically use overseas validations based on the addresses on that. If you look at an ID number, if you add an ID number to any employee, I'm just going to create a new one here quickly. And then I'm going to need an ID number. Give me an ID number quickly there, Bruce. Bryce, will you someone give me yours, please?
451015.
451015.
5084.
5084.
084.
08. I'm going to use 085 just to be okay. So it's 451015 5084 084. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
I've added a 5. Did you see it actually gave an error there?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. It already takes your gender. It already populates your gender. It already takes your date of birth. So basically, a lot of the information, first of all, we do validate SA ID numbers as correct according to the standard SA ID number validation verification. So you can't enter an incorrect ID number. That will actually show. And once your ID number is entered, it will actually auto-populate your date of birth, your gender, the basic information stored in your ID number as well.
Well, then a trick question, obviously, and there's obviously an answer. What happens if they don't have a SAID?
Citizenship? Other.
Oh, you can
Passport
other.
number.
Okay, then it won't validate the number. It'll just accept whatever number you put in.
Same as with your nationality as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the take on is the area where we would have to have a good understanding of how their system is driven. So in government, there's kind of a complexity in that even though a person may be on the same level, their KPIs are not the same.
Yes.
So they may have different KPIs per person and different weightings per person. And then they have what they call GAFs, generic assessment factors, where they have to select a certain number from a sort of standard list. So does the system have the flexibility to wrestle with those sort of issues? In other words, a person might be a social worker. Let's say they're a community worker in the Department of Social Development.
Yes.
Although the GAFs, and even the GAFs could vary, and definitely the KPIs or KPAs will vary depending upon which office they're in and how on the ball their manager is. Can we actually tailor those down to the individual level?
Yes. A KPA or KPI, the way that we set it up, if you just log in here. Let me quickly log in. It can be initiated either on a complete job level. So everybody with that same job title doesn't matter where they are. So you can initiate it across the company. You can initiate it within certain departments, or you can initiate it for individuals only. So what happens is, if you look at for a specific employee, as you can see, this one I haven't renamed yet. If you want to initiate just his own KPA, you basically go to the evaluation and you say link a KPA. And it will actually ask you who their manager is that you want that done. And you can basically link their specific one, and their specific one will be linked only to them and not to everybody with the same job title. So you can do it on a job title level, on a specific location, on a specific department, across locations, or company-wide, across all. And you can have individuals based on any of those factors as well. There's one additional thing that we're going to bring in, which is not yet there, but we are currently busy with the development, and that is to have various levels on the same job description. So you may be an IT manager, but you have 3 or 4 or 5 IT manager levels. So depending on where you are and depending on your own individual needs, you can have a higher assessment or a different assessment than what an additional IT manager will have.
Would that link to competency mapping in some way, or not really?
We can do that. We already have the ability to link various competencies. I think, let me just log in here. We already have the ability to link that to various competencies as well. So it's all, like I say, it's based on the client and the client needs, but we do have the ability to allow for certain competencies or aptitudes to be added and linked based on that as well.
And would that include the completion of particular courses, for example, or
yes.
that they've completed a course on customer care level 1 or customer care level 2 or whatever? That could be put in that competency map.
Yes, and also what happens with that is we can, if they have opted for our course catalog, we can link specific courses to specific sections or specific questions or KPIs. So if you are, for instance, below a certain threshold, then there's a specific course which are directly available for your manager to approve, if you were an underperformer based on a specific KPI.
And I guess that also means that your PDP can be built into the performance management system. So when the manager's sitting with the person and saying, well, you haven't done this course or you have done that course, they can also generate a PDP for that person?
Yes, what we can actually do is PDP, we already have the PDP functionality where you have to have a certain amount or certain accrual of points based on that. And what we can do is to link that directly to a specific KPI section, and that your evaluation or your average that you'll obtain from that section is completely linked to your PDP points earned.
Hello.
Does it make sense, Bryce?
Yes, so in a sense, it also lends itself to corrective counseling. I mean, obviously, let's assume that your ratings are at particular levels and your training courses are at other levels. If you're going to make an intervention as a manager, you could use the framework not just for developmental, well, it's always supposed to be developmental, but you could also make the corrective counseling steps, like you're going to need to go on this course and you're going to need to do that and you're going to need to, that could be built in or is built in.
Yes, that can be built in. And what we can also add to that is we can set up specific workflows or processes as well. So if we add, or if we link, for instance, specific workflow or specific process based on a specific outcome. So for the next year, you have to complete one course every month and we can link that specific process, that your rectification steps are basically automated through the system to allow you to complete that and to monitor and manage that as well.
Could also be linked to your career path.
Yes.
Obviously,
Yes, I was going to ask that as well. Yeah.
And then also the other thing, you can also link it to a TNA, a training needs analysis. So at the end of the day, so that the person can see, it's all, like Dirk mentioned, it's an all integrated system. So what you do is actually, whilst they're busy with the PDP, the manager can actually schedule the training. Okay, so can schedule the training with a calendar, and I mean obviously, and with a what do you call it? With a reminder to the employee. You can set it obviously that that with a reminder to say, listen, in a week's time you need to go and do this course or whatever. So yeah, so the whole system at the end of the day will be linked up that. So when you do it. It speaks to your career path. It speaks to the training needs analysis. It linked to the training plan, the company training plan. Everything is linked.
Yeah. What the system does is, as soon as the KPI or an evaluation is available, it actually generates a task for that employee as well as for the manager to say that you have to complete that. If there is a learning path linked to that and a specific workflow linked to that, there's tasks generated, and that is what we actually use to manage the process itself, because then you can just verify if a task was done or not, and it also has an automatic escalation, which you can set from the back office as well to say that you have 3 days to complete that, or 5 days, or a month to complete that. Otherwise, it will be automatically escalated as well.
So again, just going back to the sophistication and complexity of the system, I guess there needs to be some sort of broad map, like a mind map almost. We can give the client, showing how all these different functionalities kind of pull into the overall picture.
Yeah, it's a mind map. Our feeling with regards to that is, if you go in with a full-blown functionality, you're going to completely rattle your clients.
Yes.
The idea behind it is to say, give us your standard, or what is your standard job levels, your job titles, your locations, your departments, how are they linked, and what is your current KPIs, what is the sections in your KPIs, do you have various sections, what is the weighting, and then what is the KPI definitions in that. That's a 7 standard. Just to get a client in and happy. And because then the whole HR performance management system is basically in. Then we can go back to say, okay, would you like us to add standard HR processes for you linked to all of this? So it's based on a trickle effect. Instead of baffling them with all the functionality at once, we basically provide it to them on a trickle basis to say, okay, that is there. The next step now will be, do you have HR processes that you want automated? Do you have specific documentation that you want the system to generate based on specific, a lot of companies, for your KPIs, for instance, KPIs, if you have exceeded all expectations, they actually grant you a certificate that is being printed. The system can do that for you automatically as well. And we can set up all of those templates for you. But we have to start at the basis first, get that in. And then we can start adding their processes, internal processes. And as soon as you add the internal processes, then you've basically hooked them for life. But you start at the basics and then we build up from there.
So you could, sorry.
Sorry, Bryce. Sorry, Bryce. Yeah, the other thing is also it'll be linked with a qualifying template. So we, in the process of developing a qualifying template, so when you go to the client, all those things will be listed. I mean, obviously, so that when you leave the client, you exactly know, I mean, what is required. So in the end, and it will actually follow. It's a sequence. So obviously, like Dirk said, in the end of the day is you start with your basic information, and then from there on you build, I mean, to the next phase, to the next phase, to the next phase.
So almost like a staging diagram. I mean, a diagram that says stage 1, we're going to do this. And then when we've got mastered that, 3 months from now, we're going to go to stage 2 if you want to. And then, so you could, without blowing their mind, you could still focus in on what's happening now and grey out the things that can happen later, perhaps.
That's
100%. Yeah, current needs, don't overwhelm them. I mean, the thing is, oh, yes, you know, this is too much. You know, so start with the most urgent needs, and then obviously as you put it in, you actually then go to the next, like you said, the next phase or the next stage, and the next stage 2, 3, 4, and 5, and whatever, and then the in hook, line, hook, and sinker. What's it saying? Hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
And what we want to cover in Thursday session. In Thursday session, we're actually going to go through the qualifying template.
Okay, that would be great.
The questions that you have to basically ask your clients depending on the products and the products that they require. Because like you've seen the previous 6 weeks, we can call it that. There's so much that we can accommodate in the system, and you're going to flood a client completely and bombard them. And what's a nice word? Completely flabbergasted.
Bamboozle them. Yeah.
So if you have to go with all of the options. So we like this stepping process where you basically assess the basic needs. So do you have an HR need? Do you have a training need? Do you have this? Do you have that? And then you start to drill down further based on that. So that there's basic questions we ask beforehand that we don't overwhelm them with additional functionality that's not their core needs.
The other thing that strikes me is that maybe overall there needs to be one of those, using one of those IT kind of, there are a whole lot of them, Zen Desk and all these kind of things, where there could be someone sitting somewhere that had an overall understanding of the system, so the client could either post a question or they could ask a specific question and say, look, I'm trying to do this, you know, what do I need to do? In other words, like a background support.
We already have a back office ticketing system in place. So as the client is onboarded, they obtain access to the ticketing system. And they can also all their answers, their questions in the ticketing system itself. But also there's a FAQ section in there as well with FAQs building.
That's great.
Okay. Any other questions?
Someone's dog's not happy that you didn't have a bra today.
Yeah, my boys are listening in, and they're now starting to play with each other. But yeah, so they joined us tonight.
So they're just sending Dirk a message.
Yeah,
Enough.
that's right.
Come
Where's the
finish off
boss? Where's the boss? Yeah.
now. Yeah.
They're getting grumpy if they don't get meat. So
I think that's great, Dirk. And yeah, as you were saying, and as Shalom was saying, having the take-on map, as it were, discussed on Thursday will be very helpful because, yeah, A, we need to understand it, and B, we don't need to scare the wits out of the client. Yeah, so I think that'll be great.
yeah, what we found is if you provide any client with too many options, you should go there and tell them, do you want A or do you want B? If you're going to tell them we've got an A to Z, which one do you want? You're never going to get an answer. Yeah. But in each phase, on each stage, if you say, okay, but we can do this and this for you, which one do you like? And 2 weeks later, or after that has been implemented and they're happy, you say, okay, so the next phase, would you like that extra and that? And that is basically how we step it and build it. Otherwise, it's going to be too complex. A lot of clients out there don't even know how to do their own KPIs, to efficiently do their own KPIs. And that's why we've brought in this whole normalization factor as well, that even if you haven't done it correctly, that the system will actually normalize it for you back to what a normal should be. Does it make sense?
Yeah, the same principle as supermarkets follow. You know, brand A, brand B, and house brand. They're just three. Because if you have more than three, then people give up and go away. They don't buy at all.
Yeah, that's why what we've done as well is, if you look at CLearn, what we've done with CLearn. With CLearn, we said, okay, we've got 5 packages. How many back office do you have? Okay, that's the amount of back office users you have. That's the amount of that, because that's a core. Okay, there's your pricing. But we can do a client portal, and we can do this, and we can do that, and we can do that. But that is your base package. That is what you need to operate your business. It just makes it easier, because the system it's too extensive, whatever the correct word in that option will be, but it just has too many functions and features to try and sell everything at once to everybody.
That's why the qualifying template is very important. I mean, you need to actually guide the client to say to see what are their needs, and I mean, take it from there, because you don't want to. The last thing you want to do is to overwhelm a client with something that is so complex, or believe in their mind it's so complicated that they will never be able to do it. But if you take it step by step by step, and also introduce it stepwise, then the end of the day is, as they start using it. I mean, you only learn and gain experience by using something. So when they get on board and they start using it, and they get the feel and the thing of it, I mean, they'll get more confidence. And then obviously, and then as you add and add and add, like Dirk said, I mean, at the end of the day, it's I mean, all the things much of a muchness. I mean, just, you know, you have your various sections. Start off with PASS, then you have your various training platforms, then you want to move on to the HRI system, dashboards, all those kind of things, you know?
Yeah, I haven't added the dashboards in this session as well, but what we do, because every company's metrics and what is important to them differs. The dashboard is actually customizable, so it depends on your HR department itself and what their goals are with regards to efficiency, and that is what we enable then on the HR dashboard itself. But the HR dashboard is also a configurable dashboard, and it brings back your bell curves, but that is also depending on the company needs itself and what they need. We bring it. The bell curves, for instance, is a dashboard item that we enable. And the bell curve has a selector function where you can do it company-wide, where you can do it department-wide, where you can do it location-wide, where you can do it per job title. So it's a complete dashboard, but it's configurable. So that is all part of a needs analysis, and that is only applicable as soon as you actually go through your first KPI. Then you say, okay, let's map it against what your company needs, and we provide you a dashboard based on what your company needs and what you need to view as a company or as an HR manager or line manager.
Can I ask a question? Something that I'm very keen on, and I think it's very central to what a lot of corporates are doing nowadays, is to have an ongoing measurement of staff engagement. So would it be possible to build into the system a series of questions that get posed to staff on a regular, say, monthly basis, where it says, this month I really felt that the department went well, agree, disagree, totally disagree, you couldn't disagree more, and then give some sort of metric by department and division and so on, showing that engagement this month has taken a hit, or engagement across the group this month has gone up. Would it be, how complicated would it be to build that in?
15 minutes.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm glad. Because I really think, and it's something, I mean, Shalom and I have talked about it a bit, and it's just in my mind, there's a very strong, as we all know, strong link between productivity and engagement. And there's also a strong link between engagement and absenteeism, and engagement and people, how long people stay, and all these other good things. So if one could build in almost like an engagement module, yes, that enables the client, so once a month, well, once a week you get a question. Let's say that there's 6 questions that drive the engagement model. You know, Gallup have 12, but let's say your system only has 6 that get posed to the people routinely, perhaps once a month. And then on a monthly basis, you can get a report that says engagements on the right track, or engagements up to poor, and drill down and say, well, it seems that the people in engineering are particularly unhappy. Obviously, it's because we've got a new manager, or the managers are poor, whatever the case may be.
Because they're engineers.
Yeah, that's right. Probably. Yeah. I didn't want to say that.
Yeah. They have to bitch about something.
Yeah,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There's 2 ways in which we can do it, depending on which product set the client is actually requested for. We can use the standard HR function and set up a generic KPI, which is actually basically just a questionnaire. Yeah. And provide, you've seen the report server, was it last week that I presented the report server?
Yes.
And on the report server, we can then automate the outcomes of that report, then on a monthly basis, weekly basis, depending on how they want it. If they have eLearn or mLearn, we can make it available through normal questionnaires through that as well, and the reporting then through the reporting server being automatically distributed. So depending on the product set, there's various ways or interactions in which we can accommodate that. But it is definitely, from the standard functionality available, we can do that.
It's like a monthly temp check. You know,
Yeah.
temperature check.
That's and the other thing linked to that, and again, sorry, I don't mean to be talking so much, but I've been talking to a couple of the Gallup people this past week on this whole strength-based thing, and talents. You know, there are a couple of opposing systems. Gallup have 34 strengths, and XYZ have 20 strengths, and a lot of, according to the Gallup people that I've spoken to, a lot of big corporates now, like MTN, who probably need it desperately, and others, are starting to build strength-based profiling into their HR system, so that they know Harry's key strengths are 1, 2, 3, 4, and Joe's are 5, 6, 7, 9, and yeah. So that also presumably, if we locked in on one of those systems, we could incorporate as well into the whole thing. So you can.
What we can also do is any job title, we can basically link to a prerequisite set. So if you look at specific people that, if you look at a career pathing, where for specific job you need, what's a nice word, specific competencies or levels or personality traits or
Yes.
all that. So
Your KSAs, basically.
So we can also do that. And then there's an automated selection where we can actually build in. So if you want to have a look at employees organization-wide which may qualify for a specific position, it can actually automatically filters those for you as well.
So there's a lot of yeah. I just think, you know, the way HR is going at the moment, companies are moving away from kind of traditional performance management. They're looking at things like strengths-based skill sets, and they're looking at talent management, and they're looking at engagement levels. So all those things can be built into the system from what you've said.
Yes, it's actually quite easy to set up. So it is available. It is quite easy to set up. And what we can do is to link various competencies or character traits or personality traits or whatever you want to call that.
Yes.
Your strengths to specific job titles as well.
And because I mean, that's what the Gallup model showed originally. That you know, it's your talents that determine how well you do your job.
Yeah.
And that was the original research that Buckingham and Kaufman did, and which now drives the whole Gallup empire.
Yeah, we're not gonna. If a client wants that, we're not gonna acquire those models for them. So
No.
we're not gonna. We can use the Gallup model and incorporate that for them. But they've got to provide us with a criteria, and we can incorporate that for them. So,
I mean, essentially, what they would say is they'd have a drop down, and they would just say top strength for Harry is number 1. Second top strength for Harry is number 7. So it's almost like a drop down menu where they can, based on their own background work, because these profiles cost like R1,000 a time. They could drop in the person's strengths into that person's profile.
What we have done is the MBTI. So we've played around with, for instance, MBTI to bring in an MBTI model, and we've played around with an MBTI model that we've actually incorporated all the questions, and based on that, analyzed the personality types and also linked specific jobs to specific personality traits. But it is not the full one. As our core business is not to, if a client do want us to integrate, we can integrate directly with one of the external systems, because if you want to do it professionally, you actually need accredited
psychometrists, yeah,
which actually verifies that for you. But that is not our core business.
Yeah. So I use Human Metrics, which is a free website, and I get my learners to go there, and they do the profile. And then I say to them, listen, I haven't profiled you. You've profiled yourself.
Yes.
And then we talk about the MBTI. Well, it's actually in that case called it's not called the MBTI because that would be a trademark breach.
Yes.
It's called the Jung typology. We talk about the Jung typology, but I emphasize that, you know, the profile is of their own determining. It hasn't been, you know, determined by me.
That's correct. So we're not psychometrists, and we don't want to play in that sphere of psychometrists, but we can, and we have already done that in 1 or 2 instances, but it's not accredited. But it should give HR a better indication as to getting teams to work together better, putting the right people with the right managers, and have a better overall HR change management type of solution.
And presumably what we could also link it into one of the many free EQ self-profiling tools as well, if the client wanted something like that to be built in.
Yes, like I said, we've got a couple of our own that we can implement, or if they give us the profiling questions, we can build a profile test for them based on their questions and their feedback.
Yeah, most probably they will have their own one.
Yes.
They should have their own one. If not, I mean, because I mean, a lot of the people actually do their assessments through psychometrists and people like that, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so yeah. So, but I mean, there's so many things available on the internet, and like you said, I mean, there's also already linked to the system. So yeah, so it's depends on the client's needs, you know, what they want to address.
Now that will not be a phase one.
Yeah.
Will be
That'll be also be phase stage 6.
That is where your selection process basically comes in, and that then we also link to a recruitment process, because we can also handle the recruitment process as well. So as part of the way that we set up a company, we've got a registration and self-registration portal as well. So you can, for a specific job profile, because you set up a specific job profile with all of the requirements for that job profile, you can publish that and then advertise that anybody register against it. That can then be coupled directly with a profile assessment, so that the prospective employee can basically complete a self-assessment, and that also helps with the filtering process to get the best candidates based on certain criteria.
Yeah, look, I think that's very an interesting area, because I'm just thinking about 2 of my MBA students from 2 different big corporates. I mean, like the biggest in the country, and both of them had been put through an EQ profiling exercise with a psychologist, and both of them complained bitterly to me that it said that they weren't empathetic enough for their job, and they said that they didn't employ me to be empathetic, they employed me to sort the place out. So, a lot of companies now for senior management things are doing things like sending them off to be EQ profiled.
Yes.
As part of the development process.
Sensitivity.
Sensitivity training.
Sensitization.
Yeah, say that. Nice word.
Dirk, I think, thank you very much. It was absolutely a amazing session.
Very
This
nice.
is a very powerful system.
Okay.
So Thursday we will look at.
Thursday we're going to go through the qualifying template.
Okay, yeah, qualifying template. That's right.
How to onboard your clients and get the correct information directly from their clients.
Very important.
From next week, you basically have all the tools and all the basic info you need to start recruiting clients.
Yeah, just again, we have touched on it, and I'm just going to touch on it very briefly. I've got a senior teacher from a school here in KZN who's emigrating to the UK, and who I spoke to about the possibility of becoming like a C-Learn representative in the UK. So at some stage, I'd like to talk a bit more about reference sites in the UK, and also whether there's any basic overall background document I can give this person which explains the functionality of C-Learn to them.
And we can also, for the UK specifically, we do actually have what's a nice word? I think they call it a white paper, an industry white paper that can be used specifically for UK schools and UK learning institutions.
That would be great. That would be great.
Okay. Any other questions before we close off?
Just lastly, Chris has joined us, obviously. So, he's got, just need to mention the YouTube channel, that way this will now be posted on our YouTube channel. Obviously, all the training material, the previous training sessions. I'll also spend time with Chris. I know he's very busy, actually, all over the place in South Africa, traveling. But when he's back in KZN, maybe we can, just touch base with him. But maybe just mention our YouTube channel.
Yes. Chris, I believe I've already sent you a link on invite to the YouTube channel as well.
Okay.
So it should be in one of the mails that you have received from me. There shouldn't be a lot.
Okay.
It should be in one of the mails. There is a YouTube channel. I've already added in the mail the link to that channel as well. So all the previous sessions has been recorded, same as this one, and it is available directly on the channel. So if
Okay, marvelous.
if you want to know about any of our other products, you can basically just watch the session for that specific product. We also have a Dropbox. So if there were any presentations that were done during that session, the presentation itself is also available on the Dropbox as well.
Okay. Got it.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dirk. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys. Have a good evening.
Good then.
Bye.
Same.
Bye-bye.
Well.
Thanks.
Ciao for
Cheers.
now.
Bye. 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 Bye.